Welcome back to Happy Snapping, the podcast where we explore the wonderful world of photography with inspiring and creative individuals. Welcome back. It's been a while. There's been a break. I didn't intend for there to be a big break. There's holidays and then people got sick and then I have a family. So then when one person gets sick, it turns into like 2 months of people sharing sicknesses. But we're back and we're healthy and I mean to keep doing this. So welcome back and thank you everyone who's joined in the first several episodes and left good comments. And I just appreciate you being here. And I'm glad you enjoy this as much as I do. And thank you, of course, to all the guests who have been able to come on. We have an amazing guest for this episode. This is David, the CEO of Pixii. Pixii is a new camera startup from France, and their story is really cool. And what they're doing is really cool, mixing some extremely high-tech elements and very modern elements with very old-school elements of the rangefinder. And there's some interesting, very hard technical bits about this too. Like it turns out, there's not a lot of support out there for larger sensors and being able to be a new camera startup with these larger APS-C or full-frame sensors. So he talks about that. And then also a rangefinder. How do you find somebody to manufacture a rangefinder? And it turns out their location in France is part of the key to that. So very cool how that all came together. Pixii, I own a Pixii camera. That is the only camera I've ever bought brand new. That's how much it meant to me to put my money where my mouth is and support the company because what they're doing is so cool. I was only able to do that because of this YouTube channel. It's a very expensive camera, so it's very much a luxury item right now, but it is really cool. So you're going to hear from David. He's awesome. He wants to talk more about photography and the art of photography. In this podcast, we just dove into his company because I thought that was so interesting. Maybe we'll have him back on and just talk about the art of photography and get his thoughts on that as well. Also, another note, we recorded this back in December and some things we talked about have changed since then. For example, one of the things he talks about is wanting to be able to get the Pixii camera available on US retailer sites like B&H. It actually now is. So a couple of weeks ago, it showed up on B&H as a camera you can order there, which is very cool. I'm excited for them. Anyway, enough of me talking. Let's get into what David from Pixii has to say. David, welcome to this podcast, and thank you so much for coming on.
It's a pleasure to meet you face to face.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been having epistolary exchanges, email conversations for a bit, but pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, and but I'll let people who are listening to this know, our first correspondence came from when I submitted a ticket so I bought the Pixii camera, and I submitted kind of a thing to the help asking some things. I was kind of confused about something. And the response I got was from you, which I thought was surprising because you are the CEO of Pixii, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you answer all the help emails?
I do answer quite a lot of emails, yeah. I've started recently to share some of that also more with the rest of the team, just to make sure I do not become a bottleneck. And also
Sure. Yeah.
so that,
probably a good idea.
well, I don't know if it's a conversation on support we're having, but it is part of the connection where we try to have with photographers. And I wanted to make sure that the team also got the rest of the feedback from
Sure. Yeah.
photographers and users, the good and the bad one, right? And we're very lucky in that even if we have problems, with be it software, hardware, just logistic, all of our photographers, our customers, are generally very patient and kind and willing to, give us some good feedback in that, this is not the way I was expecting it, so here is how you can maybe do things differently, improve and so on. And most of that, needs to be shared with the team and even more directly if possible. So that's how we're managing this transition time at this point. Yeah.
It's kind of like a self-selected group of people who have chosen the Pixii cameras. So maybe that's why that feedback is the way it is, a little bit more mature, a little bit more helpful instead of just like raging about stuff. Because the type of people that would buy a camera that is this expensive, but not only that, but just has no screen and is a rangefinder, or just people that are after rangefinders, you're going to get a different type of group of people, I think.
Yes, and it is also part of how we distribute the camera, how we create it, and how we sell it to interested users. Again, a lot of people are asking us, is there a place where I can buy it? Is there a place where I can test it, and so on? we're trying to improve this, right? And at some point have dealers, resellers, and so on. But some of the advantage of having this direct link is that somehow, yeah, as you were saying, it's kind of selecting folks who are really interested, because I guess what we would not like to have is people, who have expectations of this is a second, name your favorite brand. I'm going to buy a camera from them, and I'm going to have the same. I don't know if we, level of service or etc. Again, we're a startup. That is, we can keep up with some of that demand and level of expectations, but probably with not all of it. So, yeah, it is a project, or it is a product still for a passionate group of people. And hopefully, with the help of the first users, photographers again, we will, graduate to the next major league, and be able to serve more photographers, because that's the goal anyway.
Yeah. Let's talk about could you walk me through a little bit of the history of Pixii? So, talk about like how you even came up with the idea, how it all started, and kind of like how long ago it started and where we're at now.
The story of Pixii is a long story. So the idea really started, coming to mind around 2014 or even 13, I guess, when there was a time where Sony was proposing something like, a pluggable sensor module which you could connect to your smartphone. So that
the
was
Sony QX1, I think.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
That was somehow around that time. And this is where I was starting to become serious about this idea of creating my own camera. Because the more I was seeing, new cameras coming on the market, the less I was interested in what I was seeing. Like, I was wondering to myself, when are they going to realize that there is a smartphone now which is totally changing things, and they need to do something different? And Sony was trying, honestly, to provide a new proposition. Except, it was not the right time. Maybe the technology was not mature enough, etc., etc. And so, I'm also, I studied economics when I was a student. So, reminding me of this, classical innovator dilemma problem. That is, they are like big corporations. They do this thing very well for the last decades or so. And suddenly something totally different disrupts their market, and they're lost, right? They don't necessarily have the ability, outside of very small entities within the organization, to come up with something different, to think out of the box. And so at some point I thought to myself, if I want to have the camera I dream about, I will have to make it, right? This is the story of this engineer who couldn't find the car of his dream, and so he started making it, right? So I guess I came from the same train of thought. But even before that,
and you were at the time, were you shooting with other rangefinders at the time? Like, had you had experience with that?
Yep. I had started this journey. So that journey started probably a couple of years before. Photography, it also comes with certain periods in your life, and that was the moment. My second son had just arrived. I thought to myself, first time photography was interesting, but I didn't necessarily understand what I was doing. And so I wanted to try it again and be able to really understand what I was doing in terms of, managing all the settings and so on, and really enjoying the ability to make good pictures. And again, I keep telling that, but being an engineer, reading all of the manuals and so on, aperture, manual, blah, 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 couldn't get, my head around that. Whereas the day I started to, use this camera that my father-in-law had, which was a rangefinder, which was a manual camera, well, things started to, come into place. And the more I was digging into this whole, film camera world, so then, buying my own film rangefinder, then trying this, Hasselblad cube, then, oh my God, there is even more that I can discover. So this Technica, frame camera and so on. The more I was convinced that having a screen was actually something that had prevented me from really getting it. And having an optical viewfinder was also the other kind of eye-opener. And the rangefinder on top of that makes it even less stressful, to think about the focus. Previously, focus was fighting with a joystick or a system that was very not ergonomic to tell the camera, this is where I want to focus. Whereas right now, it was becoming instinctive. And being also, this software guy who had only used digital cameras so far, I thought that maybe I was not alone that I was not alone to be lost, with cameras, just because I was considering they were digital devices and that was going to be simple because, I get those things. Actually not. You need to let go of some of your, digital habits and be able to focus on what matters. And actually what matters is what is, what you can see throughout the viewfinder.
Sure.
Reality, the people you like, you love.
And so you found this technically easy, like it started to click more with the more analog camera, which I think is really interesting. But how was the did it affect your enjoyment with photography as well?
I mean, that was like a revelation. The same type of revelation you have when you see the picture, coming out of the bath, where you reveal the print. I will always, remember the eyes and the expression on the face of my second son, when he was looking at that, and that was I was sharing the same enjoyment.
What were you doing at the time? So before you had this idea to make, what was your the business? You said you went to school for economics.
I was a software engineer. Well, I was managing engineers because, well, like most software engineers, when you get older, you do management.
Yeah.
But still, I was still happy to get my hands into code whenever I had the occasion. I was working for Canonical, so the company behind Ubuntu. It was, very exciting as well. Something that kind of opened my eyes in terms of when you're really passionate about something, wonderful things can happen. What happened with Linux, which is a project, I started using in 1989 or so, right? So in its very infancy, and I saw Linux become the main operating system used on the internet. If something like that, a small individual having an idea, in his bedroom and started coding, and he can kind of change the world. So maybe, I can do a camera that others may be interested in because, they are coming from the same background as I. It was a lot of head scratching, researching how can we do that? Is there a possibility to source, parts for a rangefinder? Is Master, Voigtlander willing to discuss with me to maybe, do a better digital, the new one after the Epson? Nope.
Nope. Dang it.
You're kind of alone.
I have the Epson RD1 now.
Right.
So I have that one as well. So I know what you're talking about.
Cool
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. And, being in France as well. So, living in a region not so far from where, Mr. Of course, today I have to forget his name. Niepce Nicephore, made the first photograph. I saw, wow, maybe there are other industry players, from not from his day, but from the 50s or the 60s. But all of that had disappeared. So I started realizing that actually there had not been a French camera on the market for more than 40 years.
Yeah, I was just looking that up before we talked. So yeah, Pixii, you're from France. So the because that is exactly where the first photograph and I can't remember the type of chemistry that they were using for that, but then later I'm gonna forget how to pronounce it, the daguerreotype or whatever it was called. That was his last name, but that was like kind of more of the modern photography we're thinking of, also in France. So the birth of photography there. But then I was surprised. There was a couple of film cameras that I found that were from there, but not for a long time. So, but yeah, I just thought that was really cool because Pixii is in France, and so now we have a new camera manufacturer.
Yes, actually, sometimes we feel a bit alone, right? In that, this market is huge. The actors historically, have been there for a long time, and we're kind of the new kid on the block. But we're trying to find our place in this world. And right now, where we feel at home is, I guess, really with a small group of passionate people who are with us for discovering, what comes next. What can we do from this basic idea of, yes, it's interesting to take a picture without a screen. Yes, it is interesting to take a picture with a rangefinder, and you don't necessarily have, to buy it from the same brand. That I have a hard time also calling them a monopoly, but they were that at some point because they were just alone. Like they are the only guys left in the room with a light, and they were the only one making a rangefinder. So I guess we're providing, or I hope we're providing, something interesting to this segment as well.
I think so. That's what excited me the most about the Pixii, is because I felt the same frustrations you felt with just camera manufacturers. It seemed like the goals right now are like, so megapixels, that's kind of still a thing, but that was a huge thing. There was a big megapixel war, just like who can get the highest megapixel count. And now it's kind of like, can we get 8K video on everything? And like, I don't really even shoot that much video. Or like, how fast is our frame rate? How light? I mean, the autofocus now is so fast. But like for most photographers, the difference from 2010 autofocus to now isn't going to help your pictures. It's going to help some types of photographers who do very particular stuff. But for most people, but you look at camera manufacturers, and that seems to be all they care about. And that seems to be all reviewers talk about. So to get something that was just different and then focused more on the experience of photography, and it still has great specs too, and obviously takes some beautiful pictures, but to focus more on the experience and less on chasing some of those specs.
I guess that's the also the name of the game. If we don't provide something different, then we're just going to be rolled on. We can't compete with Sony, Nikon, the big names, because they have all the features, and they're competing against each other on the feature list and on all the performance. But again, as that was my kind of journey, I saw that a different proposition place in this market.
You talked about the trying to see like, okay, who does anyone have a rangefinder design? Is that like out there anymore that people can use, or would people be willing to share that or whatever? How did you solve that? Is this a rangefinder you just had to like engineer yourself, or was there something out there you could base it on?
Yeah, that's what I gradually discovered. So, imagine a minute a software engineer, coming to this 10 years ago and thinking, wow, okay, so get a sensor, I take a processor, battery and so on, some electronics. Viewfinder shouldn't be so difficult and so on. Well, done. 24 months, done. And then the more I was going, through this, the more I was discovering that, you have to redo everything. And so that's why also I came back to my, hometown, because that's where originally watchmakers had most of their business. I mean, the manufacturing in France of watches was done in Besançon, so which is close to the Swiss border, etc. So there are a lot of industrial, partners I thought we could use. I've had the chance as well to recruit people who were coming out of the engineering school there, so they knew what micro mechanical mechanisms were about. The thing is, all of the industry I was talking about, well, they have customers, they have an order list and so on. And so a very small startup that says, well, I'd like to, make maybe a prototype or a couple of pieces and so on, that was taking an awfully long time. So the more we were, trying to do something, the more we discovered that we had to do everything ourselves, including, manufacturing the parts. So we bought, everything from the 3D printer, then the CN system. Don't even remember what the abbreviation means, but anyway, to machine metal parts. Electronics, same thing. We worked with partners in order to get some of that started, but then we internalized the know-how, and the same thing with the optical system. So what you see on your desk, I'd say 99% has been designed in Besançon, and then we're manufacturing where it makes sense, a bit all over the world. Our sensor is unfortunately not coming from Grenoble in France. It is probably made, in one of those big CMOS fabs in Asia. But a lot of the the mechanical elements, optical elements, and so on is coming from either Europe or very small towns around us. So.
That's awesome. Yeah, it really does. It feels very well crafted, and that was one of the things that stood out to me from such a young startup company was just how well built it was, and well designed. It's a beautiful camera, but that makes it even better hearing the story behind it and the kind of the craft.
And one important point as well was because so this is the startup story part, right? And maybe there are also interesting things we can discuss, from more the photography perspective. But the startup story was, okay, fine, you want to make a camera, so well, you know how this works, right? It needs to do volume, so you need to plan for 5 or 10K units per year, and of course you have to go manufacture where everyone in the world does it. So it's mostly a marketing project. So engineering doesn't matter. You should just give us the project. We're going to do it for you. And then you're going to be rich, right? Except, well, it didn't work for me. The idea of betting everything, from day one, and outsourcing all of that and not managing the design, maybe it was a bit selfish as well. That is, it needed to be the camera we wanted to make, right? And I designed it with with Médéric, who is also, part of the people who are discussing with our users. We really wanted to make it this way, and so it is an engineer product. It is not a product made industrially somewhere outside of our control.
I think that says a lot about
its advantages and sometimes some disadvantages.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it's way harder. Absolutely. But I do think it does say a lot about your goals and your focus, because if you were just interested in massive unit sales or whatever, first off, you would have designed the camera differently. But then, yeah, you would have outsourced it all to the very cheapest location that could do it for you. Maybe have them offload some of the design stuff to them. So yeah, it just goes back to what you're trying to accomplish.
And I'm sure that would have failed, right? Because you don't improvise making a camera. That is, the first model done this way would have been a catastrophe, which would have killed the company. I'm not saying our first model was, perfect, far from it, but I think it had some interesting ideas and some advantages. And having the ability to manufacture, assemble, and do all of this ourselves has also helped us make sure we bring people along the way, we upgrade the cameras and so on. So it is like mountain climbing. It's harder, but I feel this is the right way to do it.
You've talked about your team a little bit. How big is your team right now?
So we're just a 5-person team, right?
Oh, wow.
So we're a small company. Mostly engineers, and that's something I wanted to add in that having the engineers who have designed the product do the assembly, calibration, and so on was also part of my ideas, the ideas of a software engineer discovering how hardware works. If there is a divide between the engineers and the guys who are doing the production, we know how this works. In software, it's good to have the engineers actually be part of the production and fix the bugs and all of that, because it's just a closer feedback loop. And so, yeah, that's why we're still structured this way. We do verifications, we integrate, and then we can calibrate typically the rangefinder, which is done locally.
So the final, when the pieces get maybe in different areas and then they come to you, so the final product is assembled, tested, and everything with you before it goes out to the customer? Yeah.
And not so long ago, all of the cameras were on my desk at some point, all of them. A bit less now. Maybe I'm seeing like, a third of the cameras, but that doesn't mean they're bad, right? And Melrick and Isabel and all the guys, they're doing a fantastic job.
How many Pixies are there out there in the world right now?
There are more and more. It's not a great, it's kind of an open secret. There are less than 1,000, but okay. we're close to the 1,000.
I was wondering because there's a number on the top of mine that's less than 1,000, and I wasn't sure if that was a serial number.
We're still in the low digits, so it's still a collector's camera.
Yeah, it's very cool. And it's a cool community too. So there's kind of groups out there on the internet in different plights. I'm on a Facebook group, and there's probably some other forums out there or something where people are. But it's a tight group. And when I started kind of posting about mine, like people recognize you. They're like, "Oh, I have a Pixii too. Come, let's talk." Yeah. And kind of self-collaborate and stuff.
I was really, that was a happy surprise for me to see the Facebook user group. So I must say that I try not to go on this group, just because what I appreciate with this group is that it's actually photographers together. Pixii user group. I would prefer not for it to become like the official Pixii group where you can say certain things but not others because it's kind of managed by the company and so on. Well, no, I think it's fine to to have people share their passion without somehow my direct involvement. So, however, when something, when there are problems or when there are issues and so on, I try to make sure that I get the feedback as soon as possible.
Sure, and you're just not like directly, like the company's not directly influencing people to like say certain things. No. So I just had a chat with someone on YouTube who talks about Micro Four Thirds cameras. She's Emily from Micro Four Nerds. That's her channel. And she talked about how she's preferred to stay out of the like ambassador role for a company or because she likes these cameras and she'll still get like individual things sponsored every now and then, like a video or two, but she wants to stay out of it so that she can, when a new camera is released, honestly talk about its flaws and its what they hopes it improves and whatever. And I think that's just that's a healthier relationship for the customer or like other people who are watching it, but also for the company, because then you're not in this like feedback loop where you're only hearing what you want to hear because you're paying people to say what you want to hear.
Yeah. That's the thing about, keep us honest. So, at the forum, and, we're always there, if there are issues, we're happy to hear when, things are great and people, like this or that. Yeah, totally.
I was going to ask, is there anything, you have this very grand dream from a long time, and I think you've accomplished a lot. Is there anything you still want to accomplish that you haven't already, or like a little part of that dream that isn't there yet that you're trying to get to?
With the camera, I guess, yes. I have plenty of, it's not so much dreams, but there are other things I'd like to create with the camera. There are a couple of obvious features or performance improvements that we're working on anyway, and we hope to deliver at some point, and deliver in a way that makes it compatible with the existing hardware in terms of being upgradable. But further to that, well, there's still the software engineer in me that wonders, how much we can use all of the so-called artificial intelligence technologies in the creative realm of photography, or more specifically a camera. I have also some ideas that I'm working on, which are, not ready yet. But the main driver for me is to think that everything that I've seen so far is mostly kind of mimicking something that already exists, or just parroting features. I guess in another YouTube video there was this joke about I don't know, fish eye focusing, something like that. If the eye is just there to do the focus for you, I don't think that's first, the eye can do much more than that, and I think that deprives the photographer of some of the enjoyment that goes, some of the choice that goes with, this is where I want to focus, and I'm in the driver's seat. I'm the creative director. And so I guess that kind of also defines where I see the evolution of the camera. So it's not so much about adding. So people have been asking me to add tons of features. Distributors, for example, ask me, well, how you make you put a screen on the back of the camera? You'd sell probably 2 or 3 times more. It doesn't interest me so much. Maybe at some point, could be, but I think that right now the ethos of Pixii is that, it's in your head. It's not, bothering you every time you take a picture. The other thing is, autofocus, because focusing is hard, right? And again, I feel that it kind of misses the point. Part of the thing is in being able to control what the camera does. If the camera is the photographer arm and eye, then it makes sense to me. If the camera is kind of a screen or something that kind of is remotely controlled by the photographer, but it doesn't have like direct haptic control, then I feel we're back in the old world of the Canons and the Nikons. And why don't you put an EVF in your camera? Because people are getting older, they have bad eyes, and so on. So an EVF is the answer to all the problems in the world. To me, again, this would go backwards in that I specifically designed the camera so that I don't have a screen in front of me. The screen, again, literally, I keep hammering this, but a screen between you and the people you love, for example. So putting an EVF not so great. Plus, your camera would be blind somehow. It does have an eye right now, and it is also your eye. So I've kind of defined what Pixii will not have so soon, but there are quite a few interesting things that I think can arrive. Maybe next year, maybe a few years later. The whole AI thing may take a bit more time. Well, and I guess you know that this kind of software is not necessarily easy, in particular for very small teams. But I'm sure the neural engine we do have in the camera can do a lot more than focusing on your cat's eye, and I do love cats.
Yeah, there is a lot of potential there, and I don't know all the ways it can be helpful in, like you said, that still allow you to be the creator and the one who feels like is in total control. Yeah, there is a lot there. It is funny you're talking about the people mentioning different aspects, because it's almost as if they're saying, like, how about you make like a Fujifilm, like that camera actually already exists. So if you want an EVF, and it's not like a rude thing or whatever, if you need an EVF or something, a camera like that exists. So that's great that it exists and you can go that route.
Right.
But that's so smart to stay core to what your product is and what makes it different. Because otherwise you're in the same bucket as everything else, and now you have to compete with that.
Right. And it's a bit painful sometimes, because I feel that my life is about saying no 90% of the time and just picking up the right ideas. The ideas, or the expression goes like pick your battles. Putting an EVF, as you said, already exists. What new would we provide? Well, that others haven't done already. We almost made it an habit now to upgrade the camera every year or so. So it's like your iPhone, then your Pixii camera can also get some fresh new features every year.
Right. With the difference being that you can have those added to your camera, your existing camera, and just upgrade that part. So the upgrade you just released like a month or two ago had some different components to it, but one was for the rangefinder itself, like whatever that particular part of the rangefinder. And so, so I didn't go for it because I didn't want to ship the camera off. I was like, I don't know, I want to hang on to it, so I might do it later. But yeah, I could just pay for just that part and get it swapped on my existing camera and get that part upgraded, which I think, once again, is a distinguishing factor from other camera manufacturers.
And we can do it because we haven't sold like millions of them, right? And because I also respect the fact that, industrial players at the scale they're at, unless they've really engineered the system to be able to be, very easily upgradable, it's just not doable for them.
Sure.
But hopefully, startups like us and other, in other sectors can promote more of that aspect of upgrading things. Great things comes also from when you look at the film cameras, they always work. Right? You take some of them and they have like 50 years. I'm very happy to have a few 90-30 cameras that I have, and I still make photos with them from time to time. And that's very funny, when my brother-in-law just forgot his battery charger and was able to keep on making photos because it's a film camera. It keeps working. Just have to service it a bit. And I was looking, when I was doing Pixii, I was looking at providing the same level of durability whenever possible. And in terms of durability, electronics, hardware, that's another story. Things they last 10 years, maybe 15 years, but having a manufacturer tell you, I'm going to be there in 15 years to provide you with replacement parts, another story. So we have to bite the bullet and say, well, this thing is not going to last, but it needs to be able to, be a replaceable element.
Sure. How do you do that? Do you just make sure it's like not like the electronic stuff is not proprietary enough where possible that it could in the future be replaced with another manufacturer's version of that thing?
Yeah, that plus after 2 or 3 versions, we now have our internal interfaces, so we make sure we stay compatible, or we have an upgrade, an upward compatibility the other way around. But you see what I mean? That is trying to be compatible, so that step by step we can upgrade the camera without breaking everything else. One aspect of this is also the software. So obviously there is a Linux system in the camera, which means that a lot of that variety of hardware we can manage a lot more easily. We can also we're likely to be able to kind of so that we don't have to rewrite tons of drivers for chips and so on. But well, we still have to write quite a bit of code, especially for the camera sensor. You don't see an open source driver for the type of sensors we have in the camera. It's still the realm of camera manufacturers, which we manage to get to the to this level. I have also this idea, that at some point maybe there is a part of the camera that could have an API, so that interested folks could also be able to write, I don't know, transformers, filters, be able to interface with the camera. Have been asking us about that as well. I'm not taking that so lightly in that, I could say, okay, yeah, fine, take a look here and there, providing and managing APIs, doing the basic developer support and so on. That's still something that takes quite some time. And right now I'm more like devoting all of our focus to photographers. So,
yeah, that makes sense. That would be cool in the future if that ever does come. I think there is a niche. It's not a big population, but there is people that like that access and would like to tinker and configure and play with. Yeah, so I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, especially when I'm looking at research papers where they kind of bang their head on the wall because they have to interface with a commercial camera that doesn't really wants to be poked at, and so Pixii would be a very good research test bed.
Yeah, that's interesting what you said earlier about the camera sensors and how the type of sensor you have in here, you still have to use. There's not like a ton of open support and understanding how to connect and use it, or like things you can just use, like drivers you can use. Because I was looking into, I have another little, it's kind of like a toy camera, but they built it off of basically just like one of these generic little sensors you can buy for like a Raspberry Pi or Arduino or something. But that stuff's all super easy to use. But you're saying once you get to like these real bigger camera sensors used in like what you would think of as a professional camera, they don't have that sort of open compatibility and support.
No. To get access to that type of sensor, you also have to be somehow known in the business. Our first sensor was a sensor that was available to research labs, to industrial makers and so on. And it's only because I also have, we're very lucky to have Fabrice in our team. Fabrice was the former SVP of GoPro, where obviously good industry relations. And so he's been helping us to get in touch with the best sensor manufacturers in the industry. And so the second sensor the sensor that is something that is not available to everyone. And the documentation is very specific. This is not something you can share, right? And I've been working on Linux for long enough to know that having a hardware manufacturer start to share more of its IP and inner workings and so on, that's a very long process. And I guess this manufacturer is ready to do that for certain aspects of its hardware portfolio, but not all of them. We used to be working, with the ARM folks, the guys doing the microprocessors, and it's been also, well, they were kind of evangelizing, this industry about making software drivers available to the open source community.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So interesting to think of all the challenges. You didn't even mention that you had to go through to get this out there. Well, I'm super excited for you and your company and your vision and what you've set out to accomplish. Thanks so much for sitting down and chatting with us.
It was a pleasure, James. So appreciated the conversation. I hope we can, we can catch up at some point, about new stuff, new photographic creations. I would like the Pixii project and the discussion around the Pixii project to become more and more about the artists and the people creating great art, be they professionals or amateurs. I actually prefer amateurs because I'm one.
That's me too. Yeah,
definitely not consider myself anywhere near a professional photographer. So that's where my heart beats.
Thanks for joining me for this episode of Happy Snappin'. I hope you found this discussion insightful. I have many more episodes in the works with creative and interesting photographers, so subscribe if you want to see more of those. I'd also love to hear your comments and thoughts about this episode and any general questions you may have or suggestions for future episodes, so please leave those. You'll find more information about this podcast along with a forum for like-minded photographers and more at www.snappiness.space. All right, go out there and take pictures wherever you are and with whatever gear you have. And until next time, happy snapping.